Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So we'll begin today on the readings and reflections that we talked about earlier based on the sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya, the 8th, number 30, which is Anuruddha's kind of exclamation about the qualities of a superior human being, a good human being. And myself and Ajahn Ajahn Kachana and Ajahn Titapanyo met yesterday and kind of fleshed out at least maybe about 4 days worth of different readings to put out there in regard to the first of the qualities. But I thought it was Ajahn Yanako who read out the whole sutta some time back during a morning reflection, and we all thought it would be good to start with reading that, the entire sutta over again. So, Anguttara 8, number 30, Anuruddha. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Bhagas in Ragira, in the deer park at Besakala Grove. On that occasion, the Venerable Anuruddha dwelled among the Chetis in the eastern bamboo park. While the Venerable Anuruddha was alone in seclusion, a course of thought arose in his mind thus: This Dhamma is for one with few desires, not for one with strong desires. This Dhamma is for one who is content, not for one who is discontent. This Dhamma is for one who resorts to solitude, not for one who delights in company. This Dhamma is for one who is energetic, not for one who is lazy. This Dhamma is for one with mindfulness established, not for one who is muddle-minded. This Dhamma is for one who is concentrated, not for one who is unconcentrated. This Dhamma is for one who is wise, not for one who is unwise. The Blessed One knew with his own mind the course of thought in the Venerable Anuruddha's mind. Then, just as a strong man might extend his drawn-in arm or draw in his extended arm, the Blessed One disappeared from among the Bhagas at Ragira in the deer park at Besakala Grove, and reappeared before the Venerable Anuruddha among the Chetis in the eastern bamboo park. The Blessed One sat down on the seat prepared for him. The Venerable Anuruddha then paid homage to him and sat down to one side, and the Blessed One said to him, Good, Anuruddha, it is good that you have reflected on these thoughts of a great person, namely, this Dhamma is for one with few desires, not for one with strong desires. ... This Dhamma is for one who is wise, not for one who is unwise. Therefore, Anuruddha, also reflect on this 8th thought of a great person. This Dhamma is for one who delights in non-proliferation, who takes delight in non-proliferation, not for one who delights in proliferation, who takes delight in proliferation. When, Anuruddha, you reflect on these 8 thoughts of a great person, then, as much as you wish, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, you will enter and dwell in the first jhana, which consists of rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, accompanied by thought and examination. When you reflect on these 8 thoughts of a great person, then, as much as you wish, with the subsiding of thought and examination, you will enter and dwell in the second jhana, which has internal placidity and unification of mind, and consists of rapture and pleasure born of concentration, without thought and examination. When you reflect on these 8 thoughts of a great person, then, as much as you wish, with the fading away as well of rapture, you will dwell equanimous and mindful and clearly comprehending experience pleasure with the body. You will enter and dwell in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare, he is equanimous, mindful, one who dwells happily. When you reflect on these 8 thoughts of a great person, then, as much as you wish, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous passing away of joy and sadness, you will enter and dwell in the 4th jhana, neither painful nor pleasant, which has purification of mindfulness by equanimity. When, Anuruddha, you reflect upon these 8 thoughts of a great person, and gain at will, without trouble or difficulty, these 4 jhanas that constitute the higher mind, and are pleasant dwellings in this very life, then, while you dwell contentedly, your rag robe will seem to you as a chest full of variously colored garments, will seem to you as a chest full of variously colored garments seems to a householder or a householder's son. And it will serve for your delight, relief, and ease for entering upon Nibbana. When you reflect upon these 8 thoughts of a great person and gain at will these 4 jhanas, then, while you dwell contentedly, your scraps of alms food will seem to you as a dish of rice cleaned of black grains and served with many gravies and curries seems to a householder or a householder's son. And they will serve for your delight, relief, and ease, and for entering upon Nibbana. When you reflect upon these 8 thoughts of a great person and gain at will these 4 jhanas, then, while you dwell contentedly, your dwelling place at the foot of a tree will seem to you as a house with a peaked roof, plastered inside and out, draft-free, with bolts fastened and shutters closed, seems to a householder or a householder's son. And it will serve for your delight, relief, and ease for entering upon Nibbana. When you reflect upon those 8 thoughts of a great person and gain, at will, these 4 jhanas, then, while you dwell contentedly, your bed and seat made of straw will seem to you as a couch spread with rugs, blankets, and covers, with an excellent covering of antelope hide, with a canopy above and red bolsters at both ends, seems to a householder or a householder's son. And it will serve for your delight, relief, and ease, and for entering upon Nibbana. When you reflect upon these 8 thoughts of a great person and gain at will these 4 jhanas, then, while you dwell contentedly, your medicine of fermented cow's urine will seem to you as various medicaments of ghee, butter, oil, honey, and molasses seem to a householder or a householder's son, and it will serve for your delight, relief, and ease for entering upon Nibbana. Therefore, Anuruddha, you should also spend the next rain's residence right here among the Chetis in the eastern bamboo park. Yes, Bhante, the Venerable Anuruddha replied. Then, having exhorted the Venerable Anuruddha, just as a strong man might extend his drawn-in arm or draw in his extended arm, the Blessed One disappeared before the Venerable Anuruddha among the Chetis in the eastern bamboo park, and reappeared among the pagas at Sungsungaragira in the deer park at the Besakala Grove. He then sat down on the seat prepared for him and addressed the bhikkhus. I will teach you, bhikkhus, the 8 thoughts of a great person. Listen and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Bhante, the bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this. And what, bhikkhus, are the 8 thoughts of a great person? This Dhamma is for one with few desires, not for one with strong desires. This Dhamma is for one who is content, not for one who is discontent. This Dhamma is for one who resorts to solitude, not for one who delights in company. This Dhamma is for one who is energetic, not for one who is lazy. This Dhamma is for one with mindfulness established, not for one who is muddle-minded. This Dhamma is for one who is concentrated, not for one who is unconcentrated. This Dhamma is for one who is wise, not for one who is unwise. This Dhamma is for one who delights in non-proliferation, who takes delight in non-proliferation, not for one who delights in proliferation, who takes delight in proliferation. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one with few desires, not for one with strong desires, with reference to what was this said? Here, when a bhikkhu is one with few desires, he does not desire, let people know me to be one with few desires. When he is content, he does not desire. Let people know me to be one who is content. When he resorts to solitude, he does not desire. Let people know me to be one who resorts to solitude. When he is energetic, he does not desire. Let people know me to be energetic. When he is mindful, he does not desire. Let people know me to be mindful. When he is concentrated, he does not desire. Let people know me to be concentrated. When he is wise, he does not desire. Let people know me to be wise. When he delights in non-proliferation, he does not desire. Let people know me to be one who delights in non-proliferation. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one with few desires, not for one with strong desires, it is with reference to this that this was said. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who is content, not for one who is discontent, with reference to what was this said. Here, a bhikkhu is content with any kind of robes, alms food, lodgings, and medicines, and provisions for the sick. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who is content, not for one who is discontent, it is with reference to this that this was said. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who resorts to solitude, not for one who delights in company, with reference to what was this said. Here, when a bhikkhu resorts to solitude, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, male lay followers, female lay followers, kings, royal ministers, heads of other sects, and disciples belonging to other sects approach him. In each case, with a mind that slants, slopes, and inclines to seclusion, withdrawn, delighting in renunciation, he gives them a talk invariably concerned with dismissing them. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who resorts to solitude, not for one who delights in company, it is with reference to this that this was said. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who is energetic, not for one who is lazy, with reference to what was this said. Here, a bhikkhu has aroused energy for abandoning unwholesome qualities and acquiring wholesome qualities. He is strong, firm in exertion, not casting off the duty of cultivating wholesome qualities. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who is energetic, not for one who is lazy, it is with reference to this that this was said. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one with mindfulness established, not for one who is muddle-minded, with reference to what was this said. Here, a bhikkhu is mindful, possessing supreme mindfulness and alertness, one who remembers and recollects what was done and said long ago. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one with mindfulness established, not for one who is muddle-minded, it is with reference to this that this was said. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who is concentrated, not for one who is unconcentrated, with reference to what was this said. Here, secluded from sensual pleasures, and then he goes through the recitation of the 4 jhanas, a bhikkhu enters and dwells in the 4th jhana. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who is concentrated, not for one who is unconcentrated, it is with reference to this that this was said. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who is wise, not for one who is unwise, with reference to what was this said. Here a bhikkhu is wise. He possesses the wisdom that discerns arising and passing away, which is noble and penetrative, and leads to the complete destruction of suffering. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who is wise, not for one who is unwise, it is with reference to this that this was said. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who delights in non-proliferation, who takes delight in non-proliferation, not for one who delights in proliferation, who takes delight in proliferation, with reference to what was this said. Here, a bhikkhu's mind launches out upon the cessation of proliferation, becomes placid, settles down, and is liberated in it. When it was said, this Dhamma is for one who delights in non-proliferation, who takes delight in non-proliferation, not for one who delights in proliferation, who takes delight in proliferation, it is with reference to this that this was said. Then the Venerable Anuruddha spent the next rain's residence right there among the chetis in the eastern bamboo park. dwelling alone, withdrawn, heedful, ardent, and resolute. In no long time, the Venerable Anuruddha realized for himself with direct knowledge, in this very life, that unsurpassed consummation of the spiritual life for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the household life into homelessness. And having entered upon it, he dwelled in it. He directly knew, destroyed as birth, the spiritual life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming back to any state of being. And the Venerable Anuruddha became one of the Arahants. On that occasion, when he attained Arahantship, the Venerable Anuruddha spoke these verses. Having understood my thoughts, the unsurpassed teacher in the world came to me by psychic potency in a mind-made body. He taught me more than my thoughts contained. The Buddha, delighting in non-proliferation, instructed me in non-proliferation. Having learned his Dhamma, I delighted in his teaching. I have gained the three true knowledges. The Buddha's teaching has been done. So this is our launching place for the next bit of time to flesh out and explore these eight qualities. And so next few days we'll spend a bit of time doing some reflection on the first one. The first one translated here by Bhikkhu Bodhi as this Dhamma is for one with few desires, not for one with strong desires. And we spent a bit of time looking up the Pali for it because it's a bit of not a super well-known word. And Ajahn Jeff uses the translation of modesty rather than few desires, which seems to fit more appropriately in terms of the context, at least in our minds. It did when that first quality was fleshed out a bit in terms of not wanting to be known with one who has few desires or one who is modest. He doesn't want to be known for one who is content or energetic, mindful, all of those eight qualities, that kind of self-effacing modesty. And so we also looked up the Pali and then looked in the PTS dictionary just to see what they offered. And the Pali word is appiccha, A-P-P-I-C-C-H-A is the adjective. And it has several meanings which encompass all of the ones that we just talked about. The first one is desiring little or nothing, easily satisfied, unassuming, contented, and unpretentious. So it seems like in this context, the definitions of unassuming or unpretentious particularly apply. Appiccha. So the quality of modesty comes up in a few different places through the canon, not extensively, but enough to do a little bit of contemplation and reading and extrapolation on. Just real quickly, you might recognize that it also appears in the eight principles that the Buddha taught to Mahapajapati Gotami. And it was basically she went to the Blessed One and on arrival, having bowed down to him, stood to one side. As she was standing there, she said to him, "It would be good, Lord, if the Blessed One would teach me the Dhamma in brief, such that having heard the Dhamma from the Blessed One, I might dwell alone, secluded, heedful, ardent, and resolute." And it goes into the negative and then to the positive qualities. And what he says, just the second half of it, as for the, you may categorically hold, this is not the Dhamma, this is not the Vinaya, this is not the teacher's instruction. That's the previous ones. I shouldn't have said that. I'll just read this first quote. As for the qualities of which you may know, these qualities lead to dispassion, not to passion, to being unfettered, not to being fettered, to shedding, not to accumulating, to modesty, not to self-aggrandizement, to contentment, not to discontent, to seclusion, not to entanglement, to aroused persistence, not to laziness, to being unburdensome, not to being burdensome. You may categorically hold, this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's instruction. So you can see those 8 principles that he taught to Mahapajapati Gautami about what is the Dhamma and the Vinaya, and his instruction had quite a bit of overlap with these other qualities that Anuruddha expounded. And it seems to be that modesty is a particularly important one because it reappears several times. I thought I'd read this one more sutta that I thought was also quite interesting. It's also from the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Tens, and it's number 86. And this is with Venerable Mahakassapa. On one occasion, the Venerable Mahakassapa was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. There, the Venerable Mahakassapa addressed the bhikkhus. Friends, bhikkhus. Friend, the bhikkhus replied. Then Venerable Mahakassapa said this, Here, friends, a bhikkhu declares final knowledge thus. I understand. Destroyed his birth, the spiritual life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more coming back to any state of being. The Tathagata or his disciple, who is a jhana attainer, skilled in attainment, skilled in others' minds, skilled in the ways of others' minds, questions him, interrogates him, and cross-examines him. When he is being questioned, interrogated, and cross-examined by the Tathagata or his disciple, he comes to an impasse and is flustered. He meets with calamity, meets with disaster, meets with calamity and disaster. The Tathagata or his disciple, who is a jhana attainer, encompasses his mind with his own mind and considers, why does this venerable one declare final knowledge thus? I understand destroyed his birth, there is no more coming back to any state of being. The Tathagata or his disciple, having encompassed his mind with his own mind, understands. This venerable one overestimates himself, imagines that his estimate of himself is valid, thinks that he has attained what he has not attained, accomplished what he has not accomplished, and achieved what he has not achieved. And by overestimation of himself, he declares final knowledge thus, I understand, destroyed his birth. There is no more coming back to any state of being. The Tathagata or his disciple, who is a jhana attainer, encompasses his mind with his own mind and considers, why does this venerable one overestimate himself and imagine that his estimate of himself is valid? Why does he think that he has attained what he has not attained, accomplished what he has not accomplished, and achieved what he has not achieved? And why, by overestimation of himself, does he declare final knowledge thus, I understand, destroyed his birth. There is no more coming back to any state of being. The Tathagata, or his disciple, who is a jhana attainer, having encompassed his mind with his own mind, understands. This venerable one has learned much, remembers what he has learned, and accumulates what he has learned. Those teachings that are good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the right meaning and phrasing, which proclaim the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life. Such teachings as these he has learned much of, retained in mind, recited verbally, investigated mentally, and penetrated well by view. Therefore, this venerable one overestimates himself and imagines that his estimate of himself is valid. He thinks that he has attained what he has not attained, accomplished what he has not accomplished, and achieved what he has not achieved. And by overestimation of himself, he declares final knowledge thus, I understand, destroyed his birth. There is no more coming back to any state of being. So then the Buddha kind of, Mahakassapa kind of branches off into 10 other qualities that can be obstructive to progress in the path. So it takes a brief kind of departure from this exposition on overestimation. And I'll just go ahead and read that because it's interesting, although it's not absolutely relevant to the particular topic. The Tathagata, or his disciple who was a jhana attainer, having encompassed his mind with his own mind, understands, and he's referring apparently to, could be any one or several other bhikkhus, not just this, only this one. This Venerable One is full of longing, and his mind is obsessed by longing. But in the Dhamma and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata, obsessed by longing is a case of decline. This Venerable One is full of ill will, and his mind often obsessed by ill will. But in the Dhamma and the discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata, obsession by ill will is a case of decline. This Venerable One is given to dullness and drowsiness, and his mind is often obsessed by dullness and drowsiness. Obsession by dullness and drowsiness is a case of decline. This Venerable One is restless, and his mind is often obsessed by restlessness. Obsession by restlessness is a case of decline. This Venerable One is given to doubt, and his mind is often obsessed by doubt. Obsession by doubt is a case of decline. This Venerable One delights in work, takes delight in work, is devoted to delight in work. Delight in work is a case of decline. This Venerable One delights in talk, takes delight in talk, is devoted to delight in talk. Delight in talk is a case of decline. This Venerable One delights in sleep, takes delight in sleep, is devoted to delight in sleep. Delight in sleep is a case of decline. This Venerable One delights in company, takes delight in company, is devoted to delight in company. Delight in company is a case of decline. When there is something further to be done, this Venerable One comes to a stop along the way on account of some lower achievement of distinction. But in the Dhamma and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata, coming to a stop along the way is a case of decline. Truly, friends, it is impossible for a bhikkhu who has not abandoned these 10 things to achieve growth, progress, and maturity in this Dhamma and discipline. But it is possible for a bhikkhu who has abandoned these 10 things to achieve growth, progress, and maturity in this Dhamma and discipline. So it is kind of related actually to that first part in that obviously what the Buddha is saying is that merely learning the teachings, reflecting on them, understanding them from a intellectual appreciation, and even investigating them and penetrating them well by view, that can cause one to be overestimate and imagine himself to have attained things that he hasn't. But that if one abandons and makes growth and progress by abandoning these 10 other qualities, then that is what leads to growth and maturity in the Dhamma and discipline, not just mere understanding of the teachings. So we kind of talked a bit about overestimation yesterday, came up with in the questions for quite a bit of time there, and just wanting to emphasize that it's a trap, particularly if one has a really good conceptual understanding of the teachings and has even thought about them and tossed them around and looked at them within oneself to some extent. But that certainty and that self-assurance, in a sense, can be deceiving or intoxicating and lead to kind of this kind of conceit of overestimation of accomplishment. Conceit in the normal way that we use it, not necessarily as the Buddhist asmimana, the conceit I am, although this more mundane form of conceit is based on that Buddhist definition of conceit. So just to watch that, to see, if that kind of unwarranted self-assurance or self-confidence might sometimes arise, and maybe not just always in case of the of attainments, overestimation about attainments, but just in sometimes we can get really caught in feeling that we always know what is best for ourselves, and not always realizing that sometimes defilements are in charge of our self-confidence, of what we think is the best way to practice or the best way to spend our time, or whatever it is that's we feel like we know best, and even if the community is doing something different, or some of the senior monks have a different plan, just that kind of sense of extreme self-assurance that my way is right and their way is wrong, that can come up easily in practice and in community. So just that kind of sense of humility, of realizing that all of us are still on the path, that maybe we can learn from others, and to not allow ourselves to move into that kind of self-aggrandizement, whether it's really flagrant or whether it's just that very subtle form of defilements holding to certain views and opinions and practices, and even opinions about the teachers, about the community, what community is better, all of these kinds of things, and just really looking towards, well, what is here that I can grow from, and how is it affecting my mind? So that's a few thoughts for this beginning part on modesty. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions?
Concerning the Pali word, appiccha. I think it's a compound word, because appa means few, and icha means like want or desire. So I think like being a few desires would be like kind of a literal translation for it.
Well, that's actually, as I read in the Pali dictionary, that's the first one of those. Yeah, that was the very first one. And that's what Bhikkhu Bodhi uses. I'll read them again. Appiccha, desiring little or nothing, few desires. Easily satisfied, unassuming, contented, unpretentious. So yeah, it kind of covers that full range, but as I was saying earlier, sometimes that translation that Bhikkhu Bodhi uses in terms of few desires, can lead one. It's good stuff. It's still, one should be, broadly free from few desires, along the lines of being contented with the requisites and with what one has. But in that greater exposition that the Buddha goes into, it's pretty clear that he's talking about the particular form of the definition, unassuming or unpretentious, by the way he's describing the modest person. So it seems like it's a word that's used with different nuances in different situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think being a few desires seems like maybe too general translation for this context.
Another way you could look at the Pali word is you think it wanted to be little.
Oh.
That's more along the lines of modesty.
Yeah, right.
Just to be just kind of wanting to be small.
Wanting to be small.
May not be accurate, but
It's a nice way of thinking of it, yeah.
It's interesting because in Thai, in my experience with Thai people, to call someone yai, big, is really, it's quite an insult. It's like you're acting big. Yeah. And so
That fits along that lines, yeah.
oh, yai back, you know how to say it. So, oh, you're real big. Bad name.
Yeah.
Or in Lao, like instead of kap, you say kanoi, which means like I'm small. Senior.
Yeah, just even, you see we try and learn from some of the Thai traditions, and not only that being little, not being big in terms of our personalities, which is really hard for Westerners. We just kind of like broadcast ourselves all over the place in a lot of ways, but you can see also in the way of movement, just bodily movement, when without getting too weird about it, but just kind of like making your body smaller when you're walking in front of people or between somebody in the shrine, pausing, getting down on one's knees when one is close to a very senior monk, and kind of scooting around on your knee. It's kind of like trying to make your body smaller in a sense and not be such a pronounced presence, sort of a physical way of expressing this modesty.
Yeah, when I was in Thailand, I definitely was able to pay attention and see situations where, because like you were saying, like the cultural context, especially Americans, were sort of, it's praiseworthy to be sort of boisterous and assertive and sort of to express your opinion and to have a big footprint, so to speak. But seeing, many different monks in Thailand, probably foremost among them, on a work site or something, he's just so quiet and unassuming and almost like ghost-like, but he's absurdly busy and helpful at the same time. So it's like he's both small and like diligent in that way. Yeah, just seeing how one can, in many different ways, whether it's on a work scene or in a in a group discussion or something, how one can have a large effect on the situation without being sort of this boisterous, massive presence. And seeing that done very skillfully was something that I generally hadn't in the West, or I saw it in a new way in Thailand. So those cultural values are something that I've learned a great deal from.
Another example, Ajahn, of what you were talking about, like being small, coming to the hall. So of course we probably all notice, like when the guys come in, they're like, as soon as they step in, like their foot into the hall, they're already kind of like crouching. And I shouldn't say, right now he's the most senior monk here, and as soon as he comes in through the monk's room, he's already kind of like crouching, like tiptoeing, like even from there, like all the way to his like seat. So, really.
And just how we walk across the floor, before we kind of get the clue of how to do that. Oftentimes, clomp, 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 landing fully on your heel and making a racket, and then it's like as Ajahn says, of course, the expert at with kind of really walking on the front of your foot so that you're not putting your full weight down in this massive movement.
There was like a robbery at Nanachat once, and the thieves all took their shoes off before they came and took stuff in the shrines.
Grab 3 times. Wait, how do you know that?
I heard. I think they saw the footprints or something like that.
Oh, that's...
There was like some
It's very funny because I've been at Nanachat where robbers have come in a few times and seen them, and one time was when Tan Panyawato passed away and his body was in the sala, and there was a meditation vigil 24 hours. There was always somebody there, and these robbers obviously didn't know that, so this guy came in at like 1 a.m, and like he saw that there was a monk there, and so I was there, and he's like, "Oh, I just came in to get a Dhamma book." Yeah, at 1 a.m. when the gate's locked, can't even get in the monastery.
I thought you were going to say, he said, "Well, I came in just to rob the place. I hope you don't mind."
He's like, "I came in to get a Dhamma book."
Another thing that was interesting that you brought up was not having enough doubt. Like there are those of us who have, on like the doubt spectrum, have too much doubt. We doubt ourselves, we doubt the teaching, we doubt everything. And then, I've seen this, I'm definitely on that side of the spectrum. And then there are those who I had to actually meet more people who we don't have enough doubt. And it gave me an appreciation for my doubt. Like, oh, okay, this isn't all bad. Like, there's a balance here with this, and now I think I'd rather actually have more doubt. I feel like because I almost don't know how would you teach somebody who didn't have enough doubt? I was contemplating a little bit while I was sitting here, and the only thing I could come up with was they would just have to suffer until it sort of cracked through. But I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
No, similar. It's funny. I was just yesterday when I was reading through some of this, I was thinking that same thing too. Okay, well, self-assurance can be a good thing if it's well-founded, because it eliminates that sense of doubt. And I was having exactly the same thought, which is better, to be excessively doubtful or to be excessively self-assured. And I came to the same conclusion. It's like we don't want to be crippled with doubt, but being a little bit crippled with some self-awareness of that is better than being completely deluded and confused, in my mind anyway, and not being aware, because that kind of overestimation or excessive self-assurance, even again if it's not overestimation, but of one's attainments, but just one's, this is what I need, the rest of you be gone with whatever, that kind of over self-assurance is really hard not to crack, and it's just like in the readings from Ajahn Chah yesterday, when Ajahn Jayasara was commenting that sometimes, it just takes a really hard blow, to somebody to shake them up, like saying, liar, or, really pointing out, raising up their defilement so that they can see it for themselves. But that takes a really skilled teacher, and somebody who is rightfully self-confident and assured with their own path and their ability to read where other people are at, and the trust in a way of the person rather than just alienating them. But it may take that level of shock, or like say when we were talking about the Anagarika some years ago, who was overestimating himself here, and it just finally got to the point where it became painfully aware to him that it wasn't well-founded, and it was devastating. But yeah, I don't. It's just that much harder because it's a very strong delusion, rather than just kind of a negative self-view, doubt. And as you say, there are times when it's appropriate to be doubtful about what things you should be doubtful about. If you're not sure, until you have that self-assurance. It's when it gets crippling that it's, that it's a problem. My mind, anyway. I don't know if anybody else has their thoughts, but I always like to think of one of the antidotes of doubt for me when the issue itself is just, I just can't figure out something, or I just don't understand something. I can take refuge in the fact that I don't know. I know what I don't know, and then that brings in kind of a sense of a little more clarity, and it's okay.
And an Ajahn Chah is like absolute rubber stamp that that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The standard of the noble ones, that's worth a lot. It's also interesting to me in the Zen tradition, how I always mispronounce this, or I have it right, but I doubt that I have it right, but Watao, Sapano, is that correct? Watao. Yeah, the sort of the great doubt is seen as something to like a meditation object, something to be cultivated, something to give rise to doubt, to that exactly what Wilbur-Chah's talking about, to not knowing, that uncertainty, but like on a deep level, and I don't know as much about Tibetan tradition, but for some reason, and it's been a while since I've read any of that, but I feel like I don't want to speak out of place, but I think that's there as well. And it would make sense to me. It's a dumb. So when I read that as well, about the Wato practice, that was also interesting and encouraging. It also lines up with my experience. That like, you know, when you really look at, when I really look at my own experience and seeing that all the conventional terms don't really line up to the actual experience, that it's just like, all right, there's this sense experience and we have a story around what's happening, where we are, etc. Various names for everything, but it really doesn't get it. It doesn't capture it. It doesn't.
Words and descriptions are a step removed from that experience. They're just symbols or representations.
Part of the discussion recently too was around like, I think it was discussion of like samatha vipassana and like the tendency for, I don't know, good teachers, especially the Thai forest tradition, to use different terms kind of fluidly and sort of almost poetically or you know, use the different terms dynamically. And I think that's really important because there's a real, I know I have it in spades, this sense of like loving to be able to pin down and have very explicit definitions and, you know, the lists and all that kind of, it's almost like this, I mean, I think of like the Abhayagiri or some of the commentarial traditions in terms of like being absolutely exhaustive and thorough with the definitions of things, and actually how that can be a very big trap when one then tries to apply that too coarsely or too directly to one's own experience. So like teachers like Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Damodaro and, you know, people talk about how kind of poetic and fluid Lupuman was with his teachings. I've always appreciated that because when you try to pin a lot of that poetry type stuff down, it doesn't work and it almost confounds you, but it brings you back to that sense of doubt or fluidity or, you know, that, it's a healthy, it's a healthy relationship to the studying or the, you know, the sort of factual knowledge, you know, without getting in this trap like Anuruddhamahavitakka Sutta was talking about in terms of, you know, penetrating something through view, but not having a foundation in the practice. That literal, that like call it fundamentalism, can really encourage that kind of self-deceit or
where if you hold just that kind of concept or that explicit definition too tightly, then you narrow what it is that you might experience. Just because, you know, you've narrowed your perceptual field as to, you know, what this might point to. If you really think, well, it is this and not that, then that's what you've narrowed your field of perception to.
It strikes me also that like these discussing about like the fluidity of the articulation of the teachers in our tradition and also the modesty of those teachers, like it seems like they're predicated largely on the solidity of the structure and the vinaya of the tradition itself and the depth of the tradition. Because it seems like people need like solidity in something to really like, you know, the heart wants someplace to like go for refuge and a surety. And like in the West, we don't really have anything of that, so it like has to kind of be yourself, you know, and you see that in lay teachers all the time. And I mean, you don't really have a choice because there's no tradition there. And similarly, like with certain techniques, it's like if there's not a strong tradition around the technique, you're sort of forced to really solidify the technique itself and teach this is what these terms mean, this is how it's practiced. And I think that's a very interesting distinction because that is fundamentalism of sorts. And while from the outside our tradition can seem fundamentalist in how strictly it holds these structures of Vinaya tradition, actually I've seen within this tradition, because there's that structure and that tradition around it, there's actually a huge amount of birth for people to practice different techniques within this environment. And also it allows people to let go of the self a lot because you can kind of rest in the Vinaya and the tradition as a whole. So even though it seems like it looks like fundamentalism on the outside, it actually is the exact opposite. It's just human beings need something like that. So it's something I very much appreciate. And I've never seen people as humble as they are, that they come out of this training. And I think partly for me at least, there's a sense of just being able to kind of let go and rest in it instead of having to kind of direct your own rudder, which does require a certain amount of, you know, self to do.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, completely agree with that. Yeah, that having the external structure and external form makes it, less less able to have to construct, as you were saying, your own individual views and opinions from that sense of individuality and self, trying to define yourself in context with the world. It goes against our conditioning very strongly, but the more I do it, the more I appreciate that going against that individual nature, individualistic nature.
I'm also thinking too about like how that's manifested, for example, in the community in White Salmon, where, in some communities, religious communities, and throughout world history, it's like a lot of times communities form around a single like charismatic individual, and so people develop a relationship with that guru or that individual, whereas like our monks kind of are rotating through the Pacific Hermitage in a way that like the people of White Salmon in Portland are benefiting from our community, but not just from one specific monk, and they appreciate all these different the character types and the different people that come through there, and so they've developed I think a pretty solid respect for like the community, or even like, to use, I don't know, a little bit different word, like the institution of the Sangha, and they appreciate the role of the Sangha and the role of a monk, but not necessarily a specific monk. And that really helps, we don't have to establish ourselves as an individual teacher with our own specific technique and opinions about things. We're just sort of part of this brown mass, but a brown mass with deep roots and a lot of respect, like well earned respect in that sense. And so coming with that, it's sort of we're participating in the parami of the Buddha and the Prabhajans as we cultivate the tradition that Tanisibo was talking about.
Yeah, and so we're just representing the tradition for as many years as we're with it, and trying to keep that alive, whether we are here or not, whether we come and go, whether we live or die, but just uplifting and holding the teaching and the training.